Hello, I presented a presentation about API automation to the Minefields automation community, MindSpeak in Perth. I did a 20-something odd minute presentation. For technical reasons that I don't understand, I lost most of it. So I've had to redo the first 10 minutes of it or so at home on my video, and then when the audio changes and the visuals change, that's the original presentation, which is when I actually presented. So apologies for having this sort of hack, but it is what it is. We do what we can, the best we've got to work with. Fast forward for the first 10 minutes if you want to see what the true presentation looked like. Right, thank you for your time redoing the automation speech. Minefields Automation Community, MindSpeak Perth. So, who is this presentation for? Are you in the right place? I'm aiming this presentation at RPA people. You're experienced at RPA, but looking for new, better ways to deliver value? You're in the right place. If you're new to RPA, keen to find out more, if this is your first time, you're also in the right space. If you're an experienced integration API expert, this is an introductory presentation, and you're going to find it pretty much hard work and tedious. I apologise in advance. So, introduction to me. No one wants me to stand here, read out my resume. Quite frankly, it's boring. I've got a grey beard, I'm old, I've been around, I've seen things. I took 10 years out of IT work to work as a remedial massage therapist, which I thoroughly recommend as a way to learn to work with human beings and just care about people. I got an MBA and a bachelor's in computer science, worked in hospitals, fire brigades, banks, mining companies, federal police. Spent the last few years in robotic process automation, and what's important here is it's been mostly UiPath. So when I think RPA, I think in terms of UiPath more than Automation Anywhere or Blue Prism, etc., etc. And most importantly, I do like cats. And yep, that's the kind of presentation you're in for. I apologise in advance. So I want to start by talking about the history of API. Back in the old days, things were different. It's one of my favourite quotes from The Simpsons. API, Application Programming Interface, it's a generic concept. It's not owned by Microsoft, it's not owned by the internet, it's not owned by IBM. It's just an idea that it's an interface for programming applications, as it says. Quickly, I want to talk about Windows programming back in the 80s, in the good old days. If you wanted a file save dialog, a file open dialog, if you wanted a new window, it was an API call. Windows was a library of API calls that you did when you were programming, and that's pretty much it. I remember the Windows NT Security Access Control Groups, the DACLs, Discretionary Access Control List, the pterodactyl we used to call it, because they were horrible to program. And there we have the pterodactyl. Yep, it is that quality of presentation. So, where you see those old APIs now, and this is actually relevant, all the old Windows APIs are still there. Every upgrade to Windows is an upgrade to the Windows APIs. You use them all the time. You just don't see it. When you go and you use your Visual Basic or your C# or whatever cool tool you're using, and you make a new window where you go object.save, in the background, in the encapsulation layers, it is calling the APIs. You don't do it manually because you've got these layers of encapsulation, these onion-like layers, to make your life as a developer easy. If you want a file save dialog, you go, I want a file save dialog, and it all happens for you. This will become relevant later on in the conversation. So, modern APIs and why you should care. In 2013, Netflix received around 2 billion with a B API requests per day. 22, it was estimated 24,000 different web APIs were publicly available. That's libraries, not calls. It's a lot more calls than that. I'd expect these numbers have only grown since these dates and continue to grow until something better, newer, faster comes along. It's IT. It's inevitable that sooner or later something new is going to come along, replace APIs and be bigger, better, faster, more. But right now, APIs are where it's at. So, web APIs. You can read the description there from Wikipedia what a web API is. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the big major web entities all use them and use them heavily. If you're on Facebook, the web APIs are in the background that do all the processing, all the loading of pictures, the uploading of pictures, the cross-referencing of data. If you've got an app on an Android, or you've got an app on an Apple, or you've got a web page, they're 3 different user interfaces that all hook back to the same APIs, the same functionality. They will publish some of these APIs for third-party access that you and I can use them, so Facebook might allow you to put a post in your web page, but it won't give you access to the user security. It's a subsection that they'll let you at. We hear about REST APIs, SOAP APIs. Really? They're all web APIs. It doesn't matter. You can sit and get excited about REST. Is it count? Does it not count? SOAP, does it count? Does it not count? A developer will choose a protocol or standard that they need for their requirements, and they will stick with that. They're all web APIs. Use them as you would any other web API. Don't get too hung up about what these protocols actually mean. There's no meaningful standard difference when it comes to you using them. I just wanted to run through that quickly. Now, APIs for data. It's a data source, a data destination. You can download information. What is the exchange rate of your bank from US dollars to Indian rupees right now? Bang, there's your answer. What's the weather like tomorrow? Shall I go for a bike ride with my friends? It's going to be 24 degrees, nice and sunny, beautiful Perth. Lovely. And of course, you can upload information. I've got a new customer. I want to put my customer relationship management software. There it goes. And of course, talking about Facebook, you can update your Facebook profile photo from the web, from an Android, from an Apple Mac. The APIs do that. And most importantly, social media, uploading pictures of cats. That's my cat. He's famous now. He's very proud of himself. That will be the last photo of cats, I promise. So we're talking about RPA, screen automation versus APIs. What is the difference? RPA is screen automation. Move a mouse, click a button, type in some characters on the keyboard one at a time. RPA is slower than APIs because RPA is using the interfaces, the features, the technologies designed for a human, such as a mouse or a keyboard. They're not designed to be efficient for a computer to use. They're designed for a human to be able to move a mouse, type in some keyboards in a slow, sloppy human way. APIs are designed for computers to automate things, and they're much faster for a computer to use. So API, I really went down a rabbit hole with this and I had to prune the slides back. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole right now. But APIs are atomic packaged calls, one little unit. So when you use an API to make a request, you send the package as one block and it will come back with your answer as one block. And that answer will have a full manifest saying, this is how many rows, this is how many columns, this is how many fields, this is the data we expect to get. So if you don't get the full data, it automatically redoes it until you do. I said I won't go through that. It works. I'm not going to dive into TCP and reliable networking, but web API calls are built on top of that and are guaranteed to be reliable, or it will tell you there's been a disconnection in your network. There's a picture. Log in using an API call with your username and password. The API goes, success. Here's your security token, your session token to continue conversation. Give me everyone in my home city, everyone in Perth that's in your customer management system. Here's my security token to show you that I'm logged in, and here's my home city, Perth, West Australia. Success, here is a list of everyone that meets your search criteria. It's that simple. Atomic calls, bing, bang, bang. Now, RPA is not like that. As I said, RPA is mimicking humans. Humans will do crazy things left, right, and centre, they always do, and RPA mimicking that. The system has to be able to cater for anything and can't have any clue what to expect from you next. So if we were to take the data from a table on a web page, like give me all the people in your customer relationship management in Perth via RPA, it's much more complicated. Log into the web page, here's my username, here's my password, success. Navigate to the people page with a list of people, success. Filter the people page to just the people from my home city of Perth, Australia, success. Get every field for every column for every row of the first page, because it only shows 10 rows of data, it doesn't show your entire data set. You pull that off the screen, field at a time, column, row, for loop, iterate over it. Great, I've got all 10 rows. Now, go to the next page, the next 10 rows of people. Get every field, every column, every row for the second page, move the third page, fourth page, fifth page. Keep going until you run out of pages. You don't get the data in one set. It's a very convoluted, long-winded way of getting the same data set. So again, encapsulation. I talked about Windows and how in the old days everything was an API call, but nowadays if you want a file save dialog, you go, give me a file save dialog, and it just works. This is the same with API calls. We now have connectors. Modern tools use connectors to encapsulate all that fun stuff that's in the APIs, so you can just logically do what you're trying to do. In the example I've got on the screen here, I want to update the home address of a user on the server. So if I'm doing it via API programming, I send my username and password to get the session identity. I get the session identity and the username of the person that got updates, first and last name, to get the user ID. Once I've logged into the user, I say session ID, so I'm logged in, user ID, give me their home address. Compare the home address to the one I'm trying to update. If they're different, send the session identity, the user ID, and the new home address up to the system. That's a normal API conversation. If I'm using connectors, I've got a connector. Here's my username and password to log in. Here's the first name and the last name of the user. Here's the home address. Call the go button. The rest all happens behind the scenes. Same functionality, all hidden and wrapped in this connector, much like API calls in Windows. This is where I finish. Thank you very much.
In full integration, but for exploring APIs, to poke APIs and see what they return, see what works, see what doesn't work. If you've never heard of it and you're getting into the world of APIs, look at Postman as a tool. If you need to build a component for whatever RPA tool you use, and you want to build the component from a bunch of RPA calls, then this is a great tool for exploring that. Won't deep dive into it right now. But that's what Postman looks like. It's quite simple. Few fields, hit a post button, and off she goes. Why you should care about using APIs? All new software, as far as I'm aware, uses APIs. All the old software is being used less and less. Software that doesn't use APIs does exist, but good luck finding it, and good luck finding new software done like that. The more stuff you can automate, the better. There will be API legacy curve for many years to come, if and when APIs are replaced with a newer, better, faster replacement, whatever that looks like in the future, which is inevitable. So don't let the future pass you by. Now, this is what I find a little bit more interesting, and hopefully a few guys will wake up and perk up a bit more. Not only does APIs do upload data, download data, it provides events as well. And this is something a lot of people I don't see using very well. It can really lift your RPA game. APIs can expose events that you subscribe to, such as when an email arrives, when a file is uploaded on a server, when somebody accesses a thingamabob on Teams, whatever. Anything that happens inside any API call, the programmer can expose as an event. Exception handling is an event. I've gone to upload a file. For whatever reason it failed, I've actually got an event saying, hey, your upload failed, react to it. Exception handling can be an event. You can react in real time to anything the API developer exposes as an event. So if we were saying, is there an email? And you're an RPA, you'd start a robot up every hour. Is there an email there? Is there an email there? Is there an email there? It's a waste of resources, it's tedious, and it might be an hour after the email arrived. You can say instead, give me an event, a trigger, every time an email arrives. And it goes bang, there it is in real time, without wasting resources of robots to check if it's there when it's not there. It's pretty cool. You can actually have a trigger for each email that arrives. So if 5 emails arrive, you get 5 triggers. Each trigger deals with its own email only, and they can happen concurrently. That gives you scaling if you need to scale for a high volume workload, much better than bowling. So this is a bit of an example, I suppose. If I subscribe to the event of an email arriving, simple example, you'll use emails with me with emails. A process starts, an RPA process starts, when the event triggers. Each event is triggered to a single email. Events can be filtered to only trigger on certain conditions. For example, only trigger if the email is sent with a particular subject line, I like cats, and it contains an attachment. And if those criteria are not met, it won't trigger, it won't waste your time, RPA doesn't actually start. A real rabbit hole I had to cut really short because of time constraints, software engineering and how to use this. Eventing producer enables a producer-consumer model software pattern. UI path call dispatcher performer for no reason I understand. The rest of the world calls them producer-consumer. So you can handle multiple simultaneous trigger events and you can have them from multiple sources. So if you're collecting new users, you can collect new users from an email. Email arrives, I want to pull the new data out, stick it in the queue. And a web upload file. Also, trigger off when a new file is uploaded, get the data, stick it in the queue. And Teams text or a chat bot, anything that you can have multiple sources can push the data into you, take it, push into the queue, produce a consumer model. And it also allows a microservices architecture where you start having one process being spread over 10 robots running linearly. When one job finishes, the next job starts, much like humans do it, rather than one human doing the entire thing. So this leads to decision tables, which is a cool way of coding, a cool way of simply coding difficult logic. So you can have multiple triggers to one event. So this is where filtering is really useful. When an email arrives, if the email was sent from rpa@us.com, if there's an attachment and the subject contains the word invoice, trigger. And I've got a quick graphic there. So it's from the right sender, it has an attachment, it's got the word invoice, let's process the invoice. If it's got the right sender and it has an attachment but doesn't have the word invoice, unknown. Maybe there's a bug, maybe it's spam, who knows? If it's sent from the right email that doesn't have an attachment, doesn't matter what the subject contains, it's got no attachment, that needs error handling. And if it's not sent from the expected sender, it's probably spam, delete it, move on. So you've actually got an amount of logic already built into your event handling. Take it one step further. We've got two processes now. Send from the right sender has an attachment. If it contains the word invoice and not the word reference, process invoice. If it contains the word reference and not the word invoice, process reference. And the rest flows through the same. So you're starting to build layers and layers of logic into your event handling in a decision table rather than a big pile of if statements, which you see in a lot of linear code. So very briefly, talk about your career. For those of you wondering why you care, be valuable, deliver value, be good, do good. It's got to make sense. Now, system integration is used to move data around already. High volume, rules-driven, transactional, repetitive, and consistent. So this is where we look to do RPA. We look to do RPA on a process that we know, we repeat, we all know the rules for that. I want to talk about testing. Testing is another whole area where you can do RPA and automation and system integration that's overlooked by this industry, in my opinion. When you're testing a system, you know what the expected inputs are, you know what the expected outcomes are, so you can test, does it actually work? This is twofold. You can talk about testing in systems and you can talk about testing in software development. Every company has systems. How often does Microsoft update its email server? If the email server gets updated and it doesn't work and the chief sales guy can't actually send out emails saying, yes, we accept your offer, here is your offer, they can't do their business. They get really grumpy. So every IT department that upgrades emails has nightmares doing it and they hate doing it and they're up at 2 a.m. making sure the upgrade works. You can say to those guys, hey, I'll automate your testing, I'll run it at 2 a.m. so you don't have to be there and you'll get a report of what works and what doesn't work. You're going to make a lot of friends in the IT department, you really are. If you work in a software development place, you've got a twofold. What you've got here is API calls in the back end, as described with Facebook, and a front end that might be in a web page, might be in an Android app, might be in an Apple app. The apps, the front end, technically do test the API by calling them, but they don't fully test it, they partially test it. So test the API calls in a software development house, and using RPA only, test the applications, make sure the applications are actually delivering back what is expected. Make yourself known to your software team. So that was very, very brief and a very, very large subject. All good things must come to an end. I've talked about how APIs have been around for a long time. The current interface standard development that everyone uses for all software. They're not going away anytime soon. If they do, they'll still have legacy work hanging around. Encapsulation makes them easier. They allow eventing, which allows decision tables. And testing is a real automation option for those of you that are into automation. Think about it if you haven't. And on that note, I don't believe we're doing questions. I believe Hosni's taking over, so I'll hand it back to him. Thank you all very much.